So greetings from Pennsylvania once again, and we're continuing on our road to independence in our series here on the Revolutionary War in Pennsylvania. I think the first video in the series is about the Black Boys Rebellion, which isn't technically part of the American Revolution, but I kind of called it a precursor to that. In this video is kind of a similar thing. This is a video on the Hanover resolves. It is the first resolve for independence in the state made here in this area known as Hanover. So we're currently here at the old Dairy Presbyterian Church, and they have an amazing graveyard here. A whole slew of Revolutionary War veterans here. Almost every flag you see out there is a Revolutionary War veteran, all the way out there too. At least one of the signers of the Hanover resolves is buried in this cemetery. We're gonna look for him in a little bit. So we are currently just outside of Hershey, Pennsylvania. There is a historical marker sign for the Hanover resolves up near Grantville, just north of here. I did film that on the way here, so I'll show you that segment here next. All right, so here is the historical sign right off of Route 22. Here we go, the Hanover resolves. It's a bit noisy, sorry. The earliest resolves for independence in the state, drawn on June 4th, 1774 by Colonel Timothy Green and 8 Hanover Township patriots. They committed their cause to heaven and our rifles. Yeah, so Colonel Timothy Green and 8 others signed those resolves. Of course, there was by this time, June 4th, 1774, there was a lot of grumblings going on about how the British were treating the colonies. We'll talk a little about that later in the video, about what some of those grumblings were about. And I'll read those resolves to you later too. When we go up to, after we leave here, we're gonna head up to Dauphin, Pennsylvania, a little bit further to the north of here, to where Colonel Timothy Green is buried. But while we're here, I thought we'd look for Colonel John Rogers. He is one of the signers of those resolves. Actually, let me read the names to you first, because he's in here somewhere. I remember I filmed here years ago. I'm pretty sure we found his grave in here, but I want to look for it again. So I do have the names written in my little notebook here. I'll read them off to you. Of course, Colonel Timothy Green is one of them. Colonel John Rogers, who we're going to look for in here. Then you have James Caruthers, Robert Dixon, Josiah Espy, Thomas Copenheffer, William Clark, James Stewart, and Joseph Barnett. That last name, Barnett, that sounds familiar because I think we filmed a video in our French and Indian War series, which occurred prior to the Revolutionary War. There was a Barnett's Fort up north here, close to Grantville. So I wonder if there's a relation there. No doubt there is. But like I said, later, once we get up to Dauphin, we'll read what those resolves were, and we'll talk about some of the grievances that already occurred. But let's have a look through here, because like I said, there's a ton of Revolutionary War veterans in here and everything. This place is amazing. Yeah, just a ton of history here in this cemetery. I'm pretty sure I have the right one. A lot of American flags. A lot of, they have the older style ones here with just a circle with the 13 colonies. That's cool. I never saw that before. But yeah, a ton of markers up here. So a ton of, like I said, a ton of history in this cemetery. Like I said, I'll probably be back in the future just to look at more of the graves of all these Revolutionary War veterans. Just all over the place, they're here. Wow. Yeah, these rounder medallions are Revolutionary War. There are some Civil War, the ones that have like the 5-pointed star. So that's actually War of 1812. Oh, cool. The Civil War veterans look like that too. But yeah, so many people here. This style here as well. Yeah, look at all of them. Every flag is a veteran. And these ones up here are more modern veterans of more recent wars. That's why they have the full 50 stars on the flags. Whereas a lot of the ones out here just have the 13 stars. Yeah, beautiful old trees in here too. Oh, sounds like a train's coming. Alright, let's find Colonel John Rogers. I know, I found him here before. Yep, there comes the train. So for you train lovers, we'll get a little treat here in a little bit. There it is. There's just something always cool about hearing and seeing a train. I'm not sure what it is, but... Alright, train is gone. I've just been checking out some of the different veterans while the train was coming by. I did find Colonel Rogers. He's all the way up the front. Well, front there. We'll get up there in a moment. But I just was looking at all the different fellows here. Thomas McNair. Yeah, so many veterans in here. Hugh Hamilton. Yeah, wow. And another reason I wanted to find Colonel Rogers' grave is because he and Colonel Timothy Green later became part of a greater committee for all of Lancaster County. These Hanover resolves were just for the township of Hanover. We're in Dauphin County, but there was a time when Dauphin County was a part of Lancaster County. It was in later years that it broke away. Well, not broke away, but it became its own county. But back then it was part of Lancaster County, and said Rogers and Green later became part of a much larger committee over all of Lancaster County. It'd be cool to look up all the graves of these people sometime. Maybe we'll do that sometime in another video. Not sure if the other 7 fellas all have graves that we can visit. That's the way it is with these older ones. But yeah, Rogers is all the way up here. Yeah, there's so much history here. Yeah, right here's Rogers. In memory of Colonel John Rogers. Age, looks like he was in his 60s when he passed away. Yeah, it's a little hard to read the rest of that. Looks like it broke off at one point, and they repaired it. But yeah, here he is, Colonel John Rogers, one of the signers of the Hanover Resolves. Yeah, so not too hard to find his grave. It's just kind of interesting. A lot of these men went through a lot of hardships for signing resolves like that, being part of the initial, independence movement. Just like a lot of the signers of the Declaration of Independence itself, a lot of them lost everything, going to war. A lot of sacrifices were made. Yeah. Colonel John Rogers. And as I was walking around the cemetery, I remembered I do have my own ancestor who fought in the Civil War. We visited his grave before, France Paul Zeller. Let's try and research that some more. I can never really find where he served. I don't think it really says on, maybe I gotta double check that again. I remember researching him and having trouble finding some more details about him. Even if, where he fought and things like that, but we'll try and look into that. It'll be a cool video for this series. Alright, we're gonna leave this quaint little spot, probably head to a quieter area where no trains will come through. We're gonna head up to the town of Dauphin, further up here in Dauphin County, and look for the grave of Colonel Timothy Green. And that's where I'll read you what the Hanover Resolves say. I think there's 5 of them. I'll talk a little more about them there. Let's go. So we have made it to the town of Dauphin. Sorry, there's some more noise here. People are mowing and everything, but right behind me is the historical sign for Colonel Timothy Green. So go ahead and read it. The cemetery he's buried in is right over there then. So here we go. Colonel Timothy Green. In the graveyard to the south rests Timothy Green, officer in the French and Indian War, signer of the Hanover Independence Resolves, which is what we're talking about, in June of 1774, an outstanding leader of this region in the Revolution. Alright, so we have made it to the Dauphin Cemetery. A little bit odd, there are like posted signs all around it, like when is the cemetery posted, but I guess they have to keep people out, because even here I see some damage done, so maybe that's what it's for. Because it's kind of on the edge of town. Yeah, maybe that's why. But we're here for history, I'm not here to damage anything. So we're looking for Colonel Timothy Green. I'm not sure, I don't see a whole lot of, well, there's an older section over here. Let's see what we can find. Yeah, there are some older graves. I see some Revolutionary War markers. All right, quite a few graves. There's newer ones down that way. Let's see what we can find. I'm assuming he might have a bigger grave marker, considering who he is. Yeah, we got someone mowing their lawn down there, so it is what it is. Yeah. Oh, here he is, Timothy Green. That didn't take long. Sacred to the memory of Timothy Green, who departed this life February 27th, 1812, age 77. There he is. Yeah, so that didn't take long at all. I saw the size of the cemetery. I thought we might be looking for a while, but this is Timothy Green. Cool. I guess you call him the leader of these Hanover resolves. He was like the head of that committee. He saw from the sign he also served on the French and Indian War, so he was already a colonel by the time of the Hanover resolves. But he also served during the American Revolution as well. Timothy Green. Alright, I'm gonna find... I wish we didn't have that mower going on. I'm gonna try to find a spot to read you. I printed out those resolutions. There's 5 of them. Try to find a quieter spot. I don't know. Maybe I'll film somewhere else besides the cemetery here. Maybe we'll do that. Yeah, I'm just thinking maybe we should find a quieter spot. Although it's quieter now, but he'll come back around again. Considering the whole place is posted too, maybe we should. Maybe I shouldn't hang out here too much. Let's try to find another spot where I don't have to worry about sound and noise and other things. To read you these resolves and a few other things. Let's do that. Alright, so I think I might have found a suitable spot to read these resolves to you. Yeah, after leaving the cemetery, I found a nice park right there in town, but they were also mowing there, so that's the way it is right now. We've had a lot of rain past couple of days, and these guys who do the mowing, they gotta get it mowed because it's gonna rain tomorrow too. So, but I'm currently right here in just south of Dauphin in what's called Fort Hunter. I'm actually sitting out here behind the mansion. It's kind of nice. Let me show you. Yeah, right out there's a Susquehanna, and I'm just kind of sitting at one of these old tables here. You can probably still hear a little bit of traffic every now and then, but it'll work. So let's read these resolves. I got to print it out here. So there are 5 of them. So resolve number 1, that the recent actions of the Parliament of Great Britain is iniquitous and oppressive. And what actions are those? Well, there's a whole list of those. You know, like the Stamp Act, the Boston Massacre, the Townsend Acts, the Declaratory Acts, the Intolerable Acts. There's all these different acts that Great Britain enacted against the colonists. And we'll do a video on those later, talk more about what those were. I do have to make a trip to Philadelphia here soon, you know, because that's where the, you know, all of it happened, you know, the Independence Hall and the Declaration of Independence, the Continental Congress. So I'll read more about, I'll tell you more about those acts in that video, I think. But those are the iniquitous acts they're talking about. Resolve number 2, that it is the bounden duty of the people to oppose every measure which tends to deprive them of their just prerogatives. Let me read that again. That it is the bounden duty, in other words, we are bound by duty as the people of this country to oppose every measure which tends to deprive them of their just prerogatives. So number 3, that in the closer union of the colonies lies the safeguard of the liberties of the people. So in other words, it's beneficial for the colonies. At this time, there's 13 independent colonies, so if they would all band together, they'd be able to accomplish so much more. Actually, we should make a video about that too, because the colonies were always squabbling with each other. Like, in the future here, I need to make a video about, because there was even like a little small war between Pennsylvania and Maryland over where the border was. It's called a Cresops War. The colonies spent a lot of time just squabbling amongst themselves. You know, they were completely independent of each other. But, you know, people started to realize that if the colonies would unite and work together, they could oppose this tyranny all the better. All right, resolve number 4, that in the event of Great Britain attempting to force unjust laws upon us by the strength of arms, our cause we leave to heaven and our rifles. That's an interesting one. And then number 5, that a committee of 9 be appointed, which we talked about, who shall act for us and in our behalf as emergencies may require. Yeah, so in brief summary, you know, number one, they're basically saying that these recent actions by Great Britain are wrong. Number two, that it is our duty to oppose them. Number three, that we would work better together in union. Number four, that if necessary, we will oppose this by force. And then number five is just appointing a committee. So yeah, the Hanover resolves. And something else which I need to quick mention, which I should have mentioned earlier in the video, is that there, if you type in the Hanover resolves, there is another Hanover resolves that occurred down in Virginia. That one will probably come up first in your Google search if you search for it. But that one came after this one. The one in Pennsylvania, the Hanover resolves, happened on June 4th of 1774. The one in Virginia happened on the 20th of the same month. So they're both called the Hanover resolves based on where they were formed. Yeah, just another beautiful view of the river. Yeah, I was sitting just kind of up back here on the porch. This is the Fort Hunter Mansion. We filmed here before for the French and Indian War series, but wow. But this is the kind of place that those committees would meet. You know, this committee of 9 for the Hanover resolves wasn't the only committee. There were others, and they would often meet at places like this, like a tavern or a, you know, an old hotel or something. So it's kind of fitting that we talk about them here. But throughout the colonies, there were many resolves like this, many communities getting together. This was the first one in Pennsylvania. There are many more after that in other colonies, probably some before, some after. But yeah, just these grumblings and complainings of the colonies, of the people, due to the more offensive nature that Great Britain took towards the colonies, especially after the French and Indian War. An interesting thing is these 5 resolves in some way sum up our reason for declaring independence from Great Britain. But yeah, speaking of which, like I said, I think my next video in this series will be heading to Philadelphia. Not my favorite place to go to, but we're gonna do it. I think I found a decent place to park. We're gonna explore around there a little bit, where the Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell are. So we got to talk about all that, the Declaration of Independence and all that wonderful stuff. And it's there, like I said, we'll talk more about some of these acts, the Stamp Act and all those things that Great Britain was imposing upon the colonies. Might be a good place to do that. Might be a bit noisy there too, but we'll see. Alright folks, but thanks for coming along in this video. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one.